Hello, everyone. If you don't know me, my name is Mary Grace Adamson. I am the marketing coordinator here at QuoteWerks. I'm super excited to be your host today for this exciting new module brought to you by Quintadena. Today, we have a special guest joining us, Paul Hodgetts, who will be showcasing Quintadena's latest addition to QuoteWerks, the Workflow and Validations add-on module. This module promises to revolutionize your quoting process, ensuring efficiency, precision, and compliance every step of the way. Paul is the managing director of Quintadena with a wealth of experience in software solutions that streamline business processes. He will be guiding us through this demonstration of how the Workflow and Validations module can enhance your use of QuoteWerks. If you have any questions as we go along, please feel free to ask them in the webinar questions box. If there are any questions that we don't address, we will do our best to answer them towards the end. If you think of a question after the webinar that we do not fully answer or your question is not fully answered, please make sure to send us an email or give us a call. I'll be putting our contact information in the chat in just a few minutes. If you go to our website and hover over the Products tab, a drop-down will appear, and from there you can bring your cursor to the third-party add-ons page and see all of our third-party integrations that we support. Remember, if you have any further questions beyond this webinar, please don't hesitate to reach out to us. I will also include Quintadena's number and email as well in the chat. And be sure to connect with us on social media at QuoteWerks across all platforms. This webinar is going to be recorded and will be shared in the coming days. And with that, I will now make Paul the presenter so he can demonstrate the module.
Okay, thank you very much, Mary Grace. Can everyone hear me? There's no way of knowing. Yep. Yeah, I'm getting some nods. Slight full disclosure, this isn't a completely brand new module, although it has had a lot of development recently, so it's been there for a little while. You can see my screen? Yeah. So I'm going to talk a little bit about it first, not for very long, and then demonstrate it. So we're going to cover these topics. What is it? Who uses it? Why might I need it? And how does it work? Which is where we'll go into the demo. So what is it? It's a piece of software to automate certain tasks in and around your QuoteWerks environment. It runs in the background. Users aren't typically aware of it normally, and then from time to time something will pop up and they will be given something to do, some question to answer, and then it will just carry on going. So the normal process flow is the users working normally in QuoteWerks. They will do something which is linked to an action in the system. So, and I'll show you a list of those in a minute, but it's things like starting a new document, going to deliver a document, saving a document, converting a document. Any of those, and several dozen others, can be hooked up to a workflow action, which the system will then take. Once that intervention is completed, the control will be returned to the user, and they can carry on with whatever they were doing. So here, this is the list of triggers. So we can trigger an intervention after somebody creates a new document, after somebody opens a document, before or after the first time they save, and so on down. The most complex one is the deliver. So we can trigger things to do interventions when they first click that deliver button, when they preview a document, and when they take an action after that preview, as it might be upload to QuoteValet or save as a PDF, and before or after converting from a quote to an order to an invoice, that kind of thing. And probably not used so much these days, but before or after document QuoteWerks synchronization run starts. So that's when we can trigger an intervention. These are the types of intervention that we can trigger. There's the most widely used is validate, so making sure that all the fields on the quote that you need to fill in are filled in, and that works H for header and I for item. We can trigger the sending of an email. Show you an example of all of these. We can trigger another application completely independently to run, and there's a few other perhaps less widely used things for example, we can automatically add some line items to the quote based on what's already on it. So yes, you can do that with the configurator, with the required items tools, but here's another way of allowing you to automatically bring things into a quote. Sorry, wrong way. Who uses it? Almost anybody that's using QuoteWerks could use the validation module. The other ones tend to be used where there are more complex business processes, where there's data coming in and out of QuoteWerks that needs to be manipulated in certain ways. And what's the main reason for having it? In a sentence, it is cheaper and quicker and better customer service to get the customer order right first time than it is to fix it later. And in order to do that, you have to quote accurately, and I'm not thinking here just in terms of price, but also in terms of specification, in terms of do the various bits fit together? Have we captured the delivery address? Have we captured the invoice address? Okay, how does it work? Must be demo time. Right, that's a little, very small bit of recap of a feature of QuoteWerks that's very important for the validations, and that's the F2 lists. You're probably all aware that virtually every field in QuoteWerks has a pick list associated with it, and that pick list can have a series of values. So this is the pick list for the what I've got labeled as Incoterms here. It's known as FOB in the product natively, and that field can have a series of values that are appropriate for that, and optionally each value can have a short description. And the same thing is true even of the memo fields. So text library, I can have pick lists of values that are applicable to that field, and we make quite a lot of use of those in the validation. Okay, so let's go back to a blank document. So I'm going to create a new quote, and as soon as I've created it, I've got 3 workflow rules. That's what we talk about here. I've got 3 workflow rules that pop up, and they're immediately asking me to make certain choices. At this time, these 3 happen to have been made optional, so I can just hit ignore and continue what I'm doing. But I could at this point make selections for these, and I can validate any field in the system, any header field, any item field. I can do this. And the choices that you've got down here, those are those F2 lookup values. Okay, let's put some line items in the quote. So we'll have a few from here, have a few from here. I'm going to put a blank line in manually, and I'm going to do some of that. Actually, so I'm going to have an item with a cost that's 0 and an item with a price that's accidentally 0 as well. Let's go and grab a customer. And so I'm building the quote. I'm not doing anything unusual here in QuoteWerks. When I go to hit save, I've got my so the save is the second trigger point that we've looked at so far, and this is saying that a whole bunch of fields I've now got to make choices, and I've got no ignore and continue option anymore, because I've set these to be mandatory fields off the save trigger. What I'm going to do is go onto this tab because we can see each of these drop downs and corresponds to the F2 lists for certain fields here. And so I can make my choice. If it's a date field, when you click on that, you get a little date calendar. Some of the fields I'm only getting the F2 lists. So other fields I'm actually allowed to type whatever I like into there. So they're less stringently validated. So you've got a choice in setting the validation up as to whether you want to absolutely restrict it to what's in the list. And obviously the users can't change the list items, or allow some choice, but still making sure that that field is completed. Okay, so when I hit submit change, what that will do is it will write into the fields the values that I've chosen from those drop downs. So delivery's gone to engineer, Incoterms has gone to CIP, contract start date has gone to the 24th of Feb. It's UK date format, in case you're wondering what the 24th month is. And I've got a recommended option that's saying I'm missing a part number for line 10. So that was the blank line that I put in, and it's saying I need to put a part code in that. And I've now completed the answers to all the questions of the users. So QuoteWerks is now letting me get on with the save that I triggered. So we'll call this as validations demo. So why is that good? That's good because instead of leaving it up to me as the QuoteWerks user, raising the quote, to click through all of the tabs and remember which fields I have to put in, and remember that I can get a pick list by double clicking in a field or clicking in a field and pressing F2. It's put one convenient form up with all the options that I need at that particular moment. And we'll see a bit later on that you can have different validation rules set at different points in the process. So when we go to convert the quote to an order, we'll get a new bunch of fields that have to be filled in at that time that I don't need at quote time. Okay. So those were all validation type workflows. I said we got a few different kinds of workflow. The next one to look at is emailing a workflow. And you're probably familiar with the idea that in QuoteWerks, there's a bunch of email templates. The email workflow allows you to specify that at a certain trigger point in time, one of those emails is going to be sent. So so here I've got a QuoteWerks email template called engineering email, and that is going to go to my Yahoo email account, and it's going to send a short, or just a one-line email saying you're requested to review the above referenced quote and sign it off from an engineering perspective. Obviously, we could do that with peer review. We could do that to some extent with document approval, but the workflow with peer review, you have to choose who you're going to send it to, and you have to remember to do it. Whereas this one's going to go automatically when on this occasion, I've triggered it for, if I save the quote into that status and go save, if all is working well, that arrived almost instant. That arrived so instantaneously that it looks a bit suspicious, but that has genuinely, there's the email that has just been sent. That arrived much faster than I was expecting, and it may look as though it's one I prepared earlier. Honestly, it isn't. That the workflow sitting in the background has a rule set up that when you save it into that status, it's going to send the email defined by the engineering demo or engineering input email in QuoteWerks, and so that sends it out. And one of the trigger points for any kind of workflow, I didn't mention it earlier, is any status. You can use any status as a trigger for a workflow. So, and this is quite a typical example. So you could think of a workflow that's a document goes through a 4 or 5 stage sign off with different teams, and the team indicates that they've finished with it and it's ready for the next one just by saving it to the next status, and that triggers the email off to the next team. And we've implemented that kind of thing numerous times. So that's my second example of a type of workflow. Another type of workflow might be something like down here, where let's suppose that you've got 5 regions, north, south, east, west, and central, that this quote may belong to in some way. So maybe the business is organized into regions, and each region has got a regional manager. So Alice, Bobby, Charlie, Dave, and Ellie are the managers of those regions. And each region, and there's an office code, and maybe we've got the office code is different for each region. And so on the quote, we want to get which region we're quoting for, who the regional manager is, and who the office code is. And I could set all those 3 up just as simple validations with those F2 lists, but that would allow the user to pick the wrong regional manager for the region. So what I really want here is for the manager and the office code to be filled in automatically based on what region I've chosen. And there's a kind of workflow that'll do that. It's a workflow that looks at one field and says, what value should I put in this field based on what's in that field? And it uses the F2 description as that. So I'm going to before I talk about that, I've also got some further product options. I'll just pick random values for that and come back to that. I've also got on the deliver button, the cost of a line is 0. Is this correct? So I've obviously forgotten to price that item. The cost of left arm table is 0. I've obviously forgotten to price. So I'm catching various things that I might have overlooked. So I've got some 0 costs and some 0 prices in here. So 99. And on the item ones, it's telling me which line item it's looking, and where there is a description, it's telling me the description of the item. And let's say that this is the East region. So I'm now going to put all of those in. This is the heart and mirth bit where, and you can see that based on the fact that I selected East for the region, it's filled in Charlie as the regional manager and Y01 as the office code. And if we look on here, we find that Charlie is the correct regional manager for the East, and Y01 hopefully is the correct office code for the East. And one nice thing about the way QuoteWerks security works is that you can actually make all of these fields locked from the user. You can grey them out. You can make them read only to the users so that only the validation can write to them, and it'll still work. The validation runs with admin access. If I do happen to have, if I have left them open and I blank that out, as soon as I go to deliver, it can just pop the right value back, pop the correct value back in again. Right, something else that I wanted to look at. I'm going to have to go and get another. I'm gonna have to go and get another product. So sometimes with a product, there's different options that are applicable to that product. So, for example, these are all seating, furniture type things, and this item has a string of color options, so red, purple, black, etc. And the options that are available might be specific to the product. So far, we've looked at options that are specific to the field. They might have no effect on the price of the product. But here are the versions of this product that you can have, and there's a validation mechanism that allows you to choose to say to the user, okay, this product is available in 10 different options. Which one do you want to quote? So if I add this to the quote and go back to deliver it, when it comes out of the product database, that one of the fields in that product has got all of those color options in it, and the validation is saying, please choose one of the product options for Flexi supports upgrade on line 29. And the way that's, if I return to QuoteWerks, the way that's working is that on line 29, I've got all of the options. I'll show you before and after. Right, so you can see that on line 29, we've got a whole bunch of different colors in there. When I click the validation, sorry, when I click to deliver, if I choose an option, so let's say Libra Red, submit changes, it narrows it down to, it removes all the unselected options from that. So you can have options that operate at essentially field level. So these are the values that are acceptable for this field, or you can go to these are the values that are acceptable for this field for this product. So a different product may have a completely different set of options. So one this might be color, these might have options for sizes. And again, we can make sure that what you quote is complete and consistent without the user having to know, oh, I've got to remember to choose a color for this, but I've got to remember to choose a size for that, and this product I need color and size. It can all be set up in the background, and the user can just be given options to choose from at the appropriate moment. Okay, so I've now got everything I need on the quote to raise me a valid quote. I'm not going to demonstrate them now, but it's possible to trigger further validations based on pressing any of these buttons. And if you preview it, you can trigger validation. You can set up validation rules that get triggered for any of the preview actions. Let's skip a little bit up to the point where we go to convert the quote to an order. And this applies whether you're doing it manually like this or whether you do it through Quote Valet. The validation rules will still be applied. So just remember, I have to choose. That's kind of a built-in validation rule to QuoteWerks, isn't it? So file, convert to order. And here we've got some options, same kind of thing, some questions that are going to be asked for fields that I don't need until the order time. So these are just arbitrary names, but the sort of thing that you typically collect to that is what's the agreed delivery date. Now that we've got the order, it's not a case of we've got a lead time of 4 to 6 weeks or whatever. It's like, what's the agreed delivery date? What is the delivery address? Have we got all of that straight? Have we got the payment terms? The kinds of things you might want to do when you're reviewing an order that you might not do in enormous detail at the quote stage. perhaps you will, perhaps you won't. Different businesses have different needs in that regard. But the key point here is that we can put different validation rules associated with these different trigger events. Works just the same as before. You select what you want from, that's a list of one. That's nice and easy to choose. Option one, submit. And again, the values get written in, and it's now past the validation gateway at convert to order, and it will go ahead and convert it to an order. Document converted. So, and here we have an example of the last kind of validation that I want to show. This is where we're triggering an external program. So I've got this is just a toy program. All it does is if I double click this icon here, it runs and it just lists out the programs in a dialog box. The relevance to workflow is that I can trigger that program automatically at any workflow trigger point. So I've got a workflow rule that says on converting a quote to an order, run this program, and you saw it popped up and ran. Running it manually here. The types of situation that's used for, at convert to order stage, you might want to upload the contents of the quote, the data of the quote, up to an ERP system. Maybe that's got a cloud system and you want to make a web API call. You wouldn't necessarily want to do that in QuoteWerks scripting. I don't think. You might want a separate process that's going to take that data from the QuoteWerks quote and transfer it into another system for fulfillment. And typically that would be written as a standalone computer program. And without the automated aspect of the workflow, the user would have to remember to come and click a menu item to start that program. Here we've got it automatically chained in to be driven by workflow. So those tools between them give you a lot of ability to automate and guarantee that information is available, is being collected at the point you need it and to the quality that you need it. And that can then drive avoiding making mistakes out of the process, because you're turning essentially free text fields that the user might or might not complete into mandatory fields with a defined set of values, and those values can then drive further processes. Exactly what that is obviously varies from business to business, and it just makes the integration of QuoteWerks into everything else that much tighter. But you've got a huge amount of control over how tight you make it. So you're not putting a straitjacket onto people. You're giving them the information they need when they need it to do their job. At this point, are there any questions?
Several. There are a lot of questions we have in the chat.
Good,
so
because
thank you for all your questions. First question is, what is the pricing and the licensing model for this module?
Okay, we've pricing it at £72, euros, or dollars, so the number is the same whatever currency, per QuoteWerks license per year. So you have to have, if you've got 10 QuoteWerks licenses, you would pay $720 a year if you were a US company. So it's basically $8 per user per month, or per QuoteWerks license per month.
Okay, sounds good. And the next question was, is there a way to configure or change rules myself as the user, or is that something Quintadena would do?
Good question. At the moment, first of all, yes, you can. The rules look like this, and I wasn't going to say a lot about it, but The basics of it are very simple. So that is a workflow rule to require that custom text 01 on the document header, the S says make that a mandatory field with a drop down and display this message if it's not. At the moment, I think it's fair to say that only a few of our customers are making the rules themselves. The money that you pay us includes, I would like, dear Quintadena, I would like a rule to do this, and we'll write the rule and send it back to you. We are actually working on a GUI tool that will make that a lot more user-friendly. The other thing is we've got a library of several hundred preset workflow rules, but the basics of it is pretty simple. That's the one to run a program. So force means I'm going to do it automatically. That's the program I want to run. The email one was, that's the email one. So you just write, that's the status that I'm interested in. I want to send an email, and the name of the email from the QuoteWerks email list is engineering email. So they're what we also find is that sometimes people, they say, give us some to start with, and then they can go and edit them and tweak them. But under the hood, it's at the moment it's a text file, and you can edit it if you're comfortable with doing that, or you can ask us what the incantation is if not.
Alrighty. Our next question is, can I have different rules for different levels of QuoteWerks user? For example, if the sales rep is user A, do they have different rules to user B?
You can do, yes. You can put further conditions onto this. So you could say, oh, my screen's frozen up. So I could, for example, type sales rep Paul equal. So yes, you can. There's a lot of functionality that allows you to specify that certain rules or certain sets of rules only apply to certain people, to certain types of quote. You can say, I only want to run this rule if the customer is this. I only want to run the rule if it's a quote from a new template that's this type of thing. Yeah, there's a lot of stuff in there. So the rules are very much not, here's your rule set and that's the end of the story.
Okay. Our last question for right now is, how much are you wanting a QuoteWerks Web API? Should it become available, would you offer similar functionality in QuoteWerks Web?
I would be delighted to be able to offer this in QuoteWerks Web. Yes, yeah. As the questioner implies, this is not available in QuoteWerks Web for that precise reason. As soon as a web API becomes available, I will start writing the equivalent.
Wonderful. Okay, it's not looking like we have any more questions. Remember, if you have any further questions, please email Paul or myself at the community email, community@quotewerks.com, or paul.hodgetts@quintadena.com. Oh, we got one question. What happens if I update QuoteWerks? Will it still work?
We keep your money also includes access to updated versions of our software if the update to QuoteWerks requires it. Typically, that's if QuoteWerks change the API, then you'll need a new version. Sometimes they add fields. We have to make sure we're compatible with that. But that money that you pay you might have to install an update to go alongside the QuoteWerks one.
Okay.
But that is covered within that subscription, yes.
If there are no more questions, then I think this has been a wonderful webinar. Thank you, Paul, for your time and your demonstration of this module. If you have any questions, please let us know. Please shoot us an email or give us a call at 407-248-1481. Thank you all for joining us, and have a lovely rest of your day.
And thank you all from me.